think for Sam Darnold, it takes more than just that one game. It takes multiple seasons worth to be an elite quarterback. Think of the guys that we talk about and we put in that elite category. We're talking about a guy like Josh Allen, who's a regular season MVP. Lamar Jackson, a two-time MVP. We're talking about Patrick Mahomes, who has multiple MVPs and Super Bowl MVPs. So I don't think for Sam Darnold, just to win this football game, even if he does perform well, it doesn't put him in that elite category. And we're not going to start talking about him as a top 5 quarterback. But I don't say that to say, all right, that means Sam Darnold sucks. No, he's a really good quarterback. His journey is incredible, what he's been able to prove and do. But that doesn't mean he's going to be at that elite level.
I say?
We might not put him there. It doesn't mean that we'd be right, and it doesn't mean that we'd be justified in not at least discussing it. The man over the last 2 NFL regular seasons is 28-6. He's got the best record in football.
Yeah.
He's thrown 60 touchdown passes. He's had 9 game-winning drives, third only behind Bo Nix and Bryce Young. And he's third in passing yards behind Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff. I mean, damn, if he goes out there and wins a Super Bowl championship, and with a 28-6 record over the last 2 years, that's the best in the National Football League. Well, when do we start talking about him? Because he's done something that Josh Allen hasn't done. He's done something that Lamar Jackson hasn't done. So how is it that we wouldn't be talking about him? I understand that if he goes out there and wets the bed and looks like he's looked when he was a New York Jet, or looked like he looked the last 2 games last season in the regular season finale against Detroit and then the playoff game against the Rams when they sacked him 9 times and held him to 9 points, I get that part. But considering how he's performed over the last 2 regular seasons, combined with how he's looked against his nemesis, the Los Angeles Rams, just last week, like 9 days ago, with 346 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in an NFC championship game, to then turn around and to go win the Super Bowl championship. By the way, you beat Sean McVay in the regular season and the playoffs to win the division. Yeah. You beat Kyle Shanahan in the playoffs and in the regular season, and then you trollop them in the playoffs 41-6. You go and you beat the Rams again in the NFC championship game. You turn around and you perform at a high level and win a Super Bowl championship. We got to talk about you differently. So we might not want to put you up there with those guys that did it consistently over the course of their regular season careers. But over the last 2 seasons, how he has looked, if you culminate this with a Super Bowl championship, we certainly have to talk about him differently. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah, see, I completely agree with S.A. on this. I think it does put him in that conversation if he wins the Super Bowl. And I'll tell you why. This, to me, and I'm not comparing the 2 quarterbacks, so hear me in the right way, but like the Eli Manning conversation, right? Like, Eli Manning didn't go to a bunch of Pro Bowls. He never won MVPs, right? But he wins 2 Super Bowls and has these kind of victories and has like Sam Darnold is a large part of the reason why they've been successful in this playoff run. And that's a big deal. Like, he didn't just coast or get carried against the Rams. He basically outplayed, Matt Stafford in a fantastic offense. Yet, it's an electric game. Both offenses are moving the ball up and down the field. And everybody's like, oh, the defense. Well, the defense gave up a lot of yards and points against the Rams, and he still found a way to win. I think that's the conversation you have to have with Sam Darnold, is that he has, shaken off the comments of you can't win the big game, right? Because they come down from 16 and beat the Rams at home to get home field advantage. They end up beating the 49ers, like a drum there in the playoffs. He's taking the steps, right, to get you in that elite conversation. And here's the conversation, in my opinion. There are certain things that when quarterbacks do them, it sheds different light to me, right? Like the way Eli played in those Super Bowls, it put him in a different conversation. This is the same opportunity for Sam Darnold. He goes up and lights it up, throws to 350, 3 tuds, no picks. You can't be like, oh, man, running game and a good defense. You're going to be like, holy mackerel, like this kid played and carried his team to a Super Bowl. That makes you elite. Like, what else can you do? Like, you can't do anymore.
I guess my question would be, like, what's the definition of elite? Like, if we're going to say elite is you're the top 3 at your position in the NFL or the top 5, do you feel that way? Because you also got to remember Sam Darnold led the NFL in turnovers this year. And that's not to knock him, but it's at the same time. If we're going to say elite, like, it has to be a category in which the people in that elite category, there is no one else that is doing or have done the things that they have done. So as I look at Sam Darnold, I think he's a very good good quarterback, but that doesn't mean just because he won the Super Bowl that we have to put him in that elite category. I think that should be reserved for a select few. As you talk about Eli Manning, during his playing days, I don't think people looked at him as a quarterback that was a top 3 quarterback in the NFL when you had the Brees, the Brady, the Rodgers, and some of those guys that were playing at that level.
So I feel like I don't know if it's necessarily top 10, but I feel like there's tiers.
Okay, I think you got to look at him that way. But let me ask you this, J-Mac.
Yeah.
With these 2 playoff victories, he's turned into the third highest, turned in third highest passer rating at 122.4 in a single postseason heading into the Super Bowl, only behind Matt Ryan in 2016 and Patrick Mahomes in 2019. How about that? Does that stat matter along with the 28-6 record? Along with the 28-6 record over the last 2 years, along with back-to-back, 14-win regular seasons. Does that matter? I'm just asking.
I say most people watching it like passer rating, like I don't even know how the hell they get to those numbers when they try to figure it out.
That's fair.
Well, yes,
that's fair. But that's why I piggybacked it. That's why I piggybacked it with the 14 wins.
No question.
That's why I piggybacked it with the 14 wins. Right, and I piggybacked it with his performance against the Los Angeles Rams because he was really 1-3 against Los Angeles.
Right. Yes.
1-3 against Los Angeles.
Yes.
So that was his kryptonite.
He has been extremely impressive, and I don't want to take credit away from him. But when you're saying elite, and Shae just said it, there's tiers. So obviously we're going to put Patrick Mahomes in that tier. You're going to probably put Lamar Jackson in that tier. You're going to put Josh Allen. Are you comfortable saying, yes, after Sam Darnold wins this Super Bowl, I am very comfortable with him being in the same exact tier as Patrick Mahomes?
Here's my answer. You're absolutely right. I'm not comfortable with that. Here's what I am comfortable with. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, what the hell are you going to do?
Okay.
What you going to do? Because we've been talking about you like you here, but that brother did it. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And he didn't do it where you got to remember, Eli Manning, no disrespect to Eli Manning, because we all know he's got Hall of Fame consideration, but he's got a career 500 record, and there's a lot of people that don't believe that he's a Hall of Famer. But one of the reasons you look at it with trepidation is because it was a subpar regular season, and then you made a playoff run.
Yeah.
That's not Sam Darnold. These have been elite regular season performances.
Agreed.
Elite regular season records. And then to piggyback off of that and to add playoff excellence with it, that kind of changes things a little bit. So he's not, you're right, we can't put him up there. But you know what? If you can't elevate him, you might have to lower some other people who've never done it.
Throw Joe Burrow.
And not only that, we also got to think about Jalen Hurts. We got to think about Jalen Hurts, too. Look at how we were talking about him last year when he won the Super Bowl. Look at how they were talking about him this year. So, again, you got a point.
If he wins the Super Bowl, too, it's also something Joe Burrow has never done. So, I mean, there's all these different categories that we could debate.
I'm going into this game, worried about my play and how I can play best for this team. And that's whatever I can do to, come out with the win, and it doesn't matter. I know I got to, try to play well for us to win, and our defense has been playing great all year. So big trust in what they do, and big trust in that we're going to have a great plan on offense and execute it. There was a big enough gap to where, the legacy and what the Patriots did in the past, it's time for a new era. I think we're embracing it, and Coach Vrabel and what we're trying to build here is something that we're buying into. I wouldn't say it's daunting. I think it's rewarding.
You've won a Super Bowl with the Patriots, haven't you?
I did.
What's at stake for Drake Maye this weekend?
I think to what his point is, a lot of the conversation will be centered around the class of quarterback that he will potentially elevate himself into with a win. We start to compare him and put him in that elite category, the same question we asked of Sam Darnold. To me, I look at this Drake Maye, what's on the line is he mentioned the previous regime and the previous dynasty that came before him. Drake Maye winning a Super Bowl in his second year, potentially a Super Bowl MVP if he performs well on the biggest stage. Now the conversation for him, you start to compare and you start to bring up the Tom Brady and the dynasties. Not that he's there, but that he potentially can chase down and try to do some of the things that came before him. So when you talk about what's at stake for a second-year quarterback, the second youngest quarterback to start in an NFL since Dan Marino, when you have those type of feats early on, when you've taken your team where nobody expected at the beginning of the season with a head coach in his first year there with the team, a brand new offensive coordinator, you start to look and say, well, damn, Drake Maye hasn't even reached his full potential of where he can take this football team. This is only 1 year within the rebuild. So I think that's where the conversation starts to go, where now we're looking at Drake Maye and say, well, wow, within that 2024 class, he is now the best, but where where can he go beyond that with this team, especially when you look around their division and what potentially can come. The Jets is a team that is constantly in a rebuild. Miami just hired a new head coach, and so did Buffalo. We just talked about what's going on there. So I think for Drake Maye, this could be the start of something that nobody anticipated in August when training camp was starting.
I say.
Well, I would say this to you, J. Mac. Could you please be a bit decent to the football world by not mentioning the Miami Dolphins in this discussion? I mean, they've been irrelevant in the postseason since the turn of the century. I mean, they've been that irrelevant for that damn long. There's a lot to rave about Miami, just not their football team. We know that, okay? Not their pro football team. Okay, let's get that out the way.
Well, a different
right?
show, though.
I will tell you that I'd be very interested in seeing if Drake Maye were to win a Super Bowl, the AFC East would suddenly become incredibly interesting because of what's going on in Buffalo and what they would have to usurp in order to get to the prominence that they aspire to reach. So I like it that way. But I think the way to look at this, Jeff Saturday, is that Drake Maye's playing with house money. Yeah. When you look at him being in the second year in the league, then winning 14 games, clearly led by their defense, that being sort of reminiscent of what it was like when Tom Brady first took over, you know, many, many years ago. I think those things, I mean, the only hiccup is that you draw the comparison to a Tom Brady because obviously the defense was leading the way and he didn't get in the way and he continued to grow and evolve and ultimately, you know, elevate into the extraordinary leader that he was. Drake Maye has an opportunity to do that. But when you're looking at the playoffs numbers right now, I'm just looking at it, 3-0 record for sure. Only complete 56% of his passes, throwing for 178 yards a game, 6 fumbles, lost 3 of them, 5 total turnovers, 15 times sacked in the 3 playoff games, 5 each game, and a passer rating that dipped from 113.5 during the regular season to 84 in the playoffs. So you're looking at him and their offense, and you know that the Seattle Seahawks is the superior team. If you lose, okay, you lost to the better team. And you lost to a team that has, as great as your defense is, they're the number 1 defense in the National Football League. And you might have been bereft of the weapons necessary in Booty and Diggs and those guys, as good as they are. You know what? Going up against Seattle's defense might be asking a bit too much. If you lose. If you win, wow, you pulled that off. Sky's the limit. And suddenly, like you said, J-Mac, there are those Brady comparisons in terms of what potentially could be. But he has very little to lose and an extraordinary amount to gain. That would be my answer to this question.
Yeah, this is massive for me. I think where Drake Maye sits is he sits right at the cusp. By winning this, it would put him in the Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady starts of career. And I'll say this about even when you're trying to compare the Tom Brady thing, if you look at what Drake Maye has done this season, now I understand the playoffs have been subpar compared to the season, but his season, this guy's an MVP. Like, literally, he could win the MVP on Thursday night. And everybody's just like calling it in that Matthew Stafford did. Yeah. This guy went from winning 4 games a year to 14 in one season and had over 4,000 yards. He's, by the way, in the playoffs, he's faced the Chargers, the Texans, and Denver, 3 of the best defenses. So nobody's going to go up there and just light it up. And one of the games, you might as well take a half of it. And that snowstorm, ain't any quarterback going to look, light it up in Denver the way that the conditions were in that game. But I take this and say, he could put himself in a different stratosphere, and that means the Tom Brady's and the Patrick Mahomes, right? Winning it in the style, especially if he has a day like Sam Darnold did in the NFC Championship game. He goes out and throws for 250 or 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, has some kind of performance. Yeah. Now you're putting him in a class that, again, it takes him out of the Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, because he has won a Super Bowl, and he did it so quick. The second youngest quarterback in the history of our game, Marino and Maye. Man, you talking about elite company. When I look at him, I think he has so much to gain from this opportunity.
I don't mean to sound like Mad Dog Russo here, but take it easy.
No, sir.
Take it easy.
No, sir.
When hold on, let me hear my point. When you brought up Dan Marino, that's where you lost me. I had to punch it up again just to make sure I remembered correctly. Dan Marino, in his second year, threw for 5,000 5,000 yards in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not to call the NFL soft because we would never call the NFL soft, but compared to what it used to be
it's like
in the 80s,
500 yards.
Dan Marino threw for 5,000 yards, and on top of it all, 48 touchdowns. So I mean, no. Don Shula never gave him a defense. That was Dan Marino throwing the Super Duper and Mark Super Duper and Mark Clayton and those boys. Watch your tongue,
No, sir.
Sergeant Friday. You can't compare that
filibuster right now. You're filibustering me right now.
Easy.
If he wins it, Dan Marino didn't win it. You're taking a separation again because he would. This is all going on if he wins it, not just getting there. We're gonna have that. If you go win the Super Bowl, you do get put in a different category that unfortunately Marino's not in. Stephen A. I don't care what year it is.
But you were talking about the second year in the league, and I'm like, it's two different worlds for the second year in the league. The offense for the Miami Dolphins carried them to the Super Bowl. The defense has carried these Patriots to the Super Bowl. Let's not get it twisted.
No,
that's Dan Marino you're talking about here. Watch your tongue.
That is not true. Their offense played extremely well in the regular season. They have not done as good a job in the playoffs, but their offense, he's an MVP. He's either going to be first or second in the MVP.
It was come on, Sergeant Friday. It was
You are
the offense
too
was
much.
The offense was That offense was all right. I'm talking compared to Dan Marino. That offense in Miami. Come on now.
I mean, listen, you're the only one who's old enough to have watched Dan Marino live.
Yeah.
But look, I was pulling for Marino.
That was me.